Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 21 of the Fourth String Sports Podcast. I am your host, Brady, with my co-hosts, Mitch and Skylar. Say hi, gentlemen.
It's been a day.
Yeah, a day.
It has been a day. We appreciate everybody tuning in on the last episode. We talked about the Chargers. Today we're going to break down the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to talk about the other L.A. team today. We're finally getting back to the NFC. I think we've had 6 straight episodes with AFC teams, so we're getting back into the NFC.
That's about right.
The next couple of episodes we have planned, we have Miami after this, and then we're going to close out the NFC North by talking about the Minnesota Vikings, and then we move on to the New England Patriots. So if there is any Dolphins, Vikings, or Patriots fans out there, tune in for the next couple episodes. Send us your questions ahead of time as to what you kind of think. We'll read those off if they're interesting, or if you bring up a good point. Today we are going to break down the Rams, as well as we're going to talk about we got our whats and our putts. So our whats, we're going to break down the top 5 March Madness performers, and our putts is a segment that we do where we just pick whoever was the dumbest team, player, organization, mascot, individual moment of the last couple of days here. Follow us on all the bullshits, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, SoundCloud, Reddit, YouTube, the whole fucking 9 yards, Fourth String Sports Podcast. Like, subscribe, follow, comment, all of it. We appreciate everything. I do want to give a shout out to our fans because we're seeing a steady uptick in our numbers, especially on Spotify. We're seeing just our numbers continue to go up. It's not a lot, but this is always a DIY podcast, so we appreciate that. And that's the beautiful thing about sports podcasts is that we will always have something to talk about. So we just hope to always have an audience who's there to listen. So we appreciate everybody. Also, you can email us, and you can reach us at the fourthstringsp@gmail.com. That is FOURTH stringsp@gmail.com. So, Mitch, you had the what's list topic, so why don't you read it off to us? And then Skylar, since I think you're the next to go first, then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so for this episode, my what's list is the top 5 March Madness players. And to clarify how the list goes, we are looking at players who performed very well within the March Madness tournament, and we're not counting what they did in the regular season or the conference tourney, just what they did in March Madness. And it's top 5.
Okay. Well, I have like a clear number 1, but the rest of them all in whatever order you want to put them in.
Okay.
So I'll go through the 4 and then I'll do my number 1. Kemba Walker I have on mine. Christian Laettner, Steph Curry, Bill Walton, and then Lou Alcindor or Kareem is my number 1. Kareem, I think he did amazing things at UCLA. Was part of those John Wooden teams that just dominated basketball for years. He was the first Naismith player. Like he was the first person to win the Naismith Award, but that's other things. But just in March Madness alone, I think that carrying them, I think they won 2 straight with him there. They had other players. I think Bill Walton was also on the team when he was there. But I mean, some of it has to do with his NBA legacy, but I think that he really got started and became the Kareem we knew. He was so dominant that the NCAA told him he couldn't dunk. And so he perfected the sky hook in college because he was told he couldn't dunk. And so him getting that Kareem move that we all know and love, the sky hook, developed in college and in those tournament games. So that's why I had to put him on there, because he was so good that they told him he couldn't dunk on anybody.
I agree with a large part of your list. I do kind of have an issue with Kemba Walker. My big issue with UConn that year is that UConn caught a lot of really lucky breaks in who they had to play. It's nothing against Kemba Walker or Shabazz Napier. Like, they were a great team. They ran the circuit in the Big East, but it's like before they even had to really play anybody, they came in as the 3 seed. They got lucky because Duke lost in the Sweet 16 to Arizona, who was a 5 seed, and Arizona had beat Texas. And then when they got to the Final Four, they had to go play Kentucky. instead of having to play number 1 seed Ohio State. Kentucky beat number 2 seed North Carolina, which was a great team that year. So Kentucky was walking in as a 4 seed, and it wasn't even the best Calipari year. But then if you look at on the other side of the bracket, like Kansas was the 1 seed who got bounced by a really good VCU team that year. But Kansas was favored to go win the national championship. And then Butler made a Cinderella run on their own end. Like Butler caught some really lucky breaks on their own end. But Butler was a great team. They beat number 1 Pittsburgh. They beat number 4 Wisconsin. They played really great. I kind of have an issue with UConn and with Kemba Walker. Again, it's nothing against him as a player. I've always felt that like that season they caught a lot of lucky breaks. But everybody else on your list, I pretty much agree with.
Yeah, I think I put Kemba on there just because that run that they had, and he specifically had. And I mean, yeah, it starts in the conference tournament because there were some people that were like, they're not supposed to win this Big East tournament, and they did.
Yeah, he had a great buzzer beat. I think it was him who had the buzzer beater against Providence, which was a fantastic game.
I mean, we're not, according to Mitch, we're not supposed to put in the conference tournaments in this. So, I mean, that aside. But the run that he had where it was the game he had where he scored the least amount was in the championship game, but they still won by a comfortable margin against Butler. I just think that I think part of what makes March Madness is all of those lucky breaks that UConn got and that Kemba got to make it that far. Because statistically, how they got there was almost insane. I mean, they had to beat a really good San Diego State team to get there. They had to they beat a good Cincinnati team to get there. I'll agree that like playing Bucknell wasn't hard, but I don't think that and like Arizona probably wasn't the hardest game for them to play in the Elite Eight. But I mean, it's not like once you get like Kentucky has always been a good game, like and they won that game by 1. So it's not like they didn't have troubles along the way. They did, and I think that I think that Kemba is one of the most clutch Final Four players that's ever existed, whether it's points or assists or things in general. I think that it just hit the way he was able to propel a UConn team that honestly performed a lot better than anybody thought they were supposed to, and you can really put it on Kemba's back because he really didn't have anybody else to help him. Whereas like Kareem had Bill Walton. Steph kind of did it on his own, but Christian Laettner was part of 4 Duke teams that were all really good. Like Kemba, basically that year was him. It was him. It was his year. It was his team. He had to do it himself. So that's why I put him on the list.
Yeah. I really don't have a problem with your list. I mean, Steph and Kemba are kind of questionable, but I do see why you would put them in top 5. I get the argument, so I really don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, Steph also. I mean, I get it. Davidson, small town school. All right, so let's move on to mine. Mine is in order. Number 5, I have Magic Johnson, Michigan State. Number 4, I have Larry Bird, Indiana State University. Go Sycamores. Number 3, I have Bill Russell, the University of San Francisco. Number 2, I have Bill Walton, UCLA. And number 1, I agree with you, Skylar. I have Lou Alcindor, or the artist currently known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But I have 2 honorable mentions. The first one is guard from Stanford, Miss Candace Wiggins. While she was at Stanford during the 16 NCAA tournament game she played, she averaged 22.9 points per game, which is insane. And then my other shout out is Sister Jean for Loyola Chicago from a couple seasons ago. The run that she willed that team to take was truly artistic, and I loved the story behind her and everything. So number 1 is Kareem, hands down, but my honorable mentions, I have Candace Wiggins because I feel like it's necessary. No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I feel like giving a shout out to women's basketball because it can be just as entertaining and just as statistically interesting. But then also a shout out to Sister Jean because that was one of my favorite storylines that's ever existed in sports. That was so great. So yeah, that's my list.
Yeah, I almost put Bill Russell and Larry Bird on my list because of just how dominant they were to will those, again, small teams to, championships, honestly. But it was kind of like, I know what Bill Russell's also, I consider him I put him on, I think I had him on my list for top 10 NBA all-time players. I mean, he can be put up there for coaches too, honestly, what he was able to do as a coach for the Celtics. But I think more of their success could be attributed in the NBA than in college, and I wanted to get like Christian Leitner on the list, where it was just kind of like where what he did at Duke, I thought was legendary.
Well, see, that's where I'll disagree with you, because Bill Russell at the University of San Francisco won back-to-back national championships, was most outstanding player in 55. He holds the records for rebounds in a Final Four game with 27. He also once blocked 13 shots in an NCAA March Madness tournament, and helped USF. I know it's outside of the March Madness, but helped them to a 55-game winning streak. Bill Russell, I don't think it's enough credit because it was 50s basketball and 60s basketball. But man, what he did with the Dons out there in San Francisco, like, that's still taught today. He was absolutely a dominant basketball player, and I think more dominant than Christian Leitner was at Duke.
Well, I'm not saying Christian Leitner was a dominant player, just the consistency that he had with those Duke teams, I thought was great. That's more of what I'm talking about.
I don't know how much more you can be consistent than back-to-back national championships, man.
Wait, okay, give me a second. Mitch, you talk.
Okay.
I need to look some shit up.
Jeez. Yeah, I like your list. I didn't have Bill Russell and Larry Bird, but they are definitely worthy of being in the top 5. I just had a couple players that I thought were a little bit better, but they're definitely top 5 worthy. So I don't have much to hate on it, except for why couldn't you put Sister Jean at number 1?
Sister Jean is honorable mention. I can't put her at number 1 because she didn't physically play in any of the games. But she was great. I felt like I had to, A, for comic relief, and B, for just because I truly think it's one of the greatest storylines in sports. Larry Bird, I've always been so intrigued with, being at Indiana State. He willed his team to a 33-1 record. He played so well in the in March Madness, and only lost to Magic Johnson and the Spartans in the national championship game, one of the most viewed national championship games in NCAA March Madness history. He was a dominant wrecking force at Indiana State that helped propel him to the Celtics and eventually helped propel him to multiple, NBA championships. But it all starts back there at Indiana State, and Skyler even said, like, Lou Alcindor had some assistants, Kareem had some assistants, Bill Walton had some assistants, guys who came from great programs from Coach Wooden. But Larry Bird was truly taking a no-name school from no-name Indiana and making them nationally relevant, due in large part to his ability in March Madness. So, Mitch, who's on your list?
Okay, I'll go in order. So at number 5, I have Joakim Noah from Florida. At number 4, I have Austin Carr from Notre Dame. Number 3, I have Bill Walton. Number 2, I have Leitner. And then number 1, I have Kareem.
Okay, tell me about Austin Carr.
Austin Carr is considered probably the best scorer in March Madness history. For example, he dropped 61 points against Ohio State in 1970. He holds records for the most field goals in a game, most field goals attempts in a game, and he has a record that probably will never get broken. He scored an average of 50 points per game in a 7-game span in the tournament.
Jesus.
Yeah, so
literally never heard of the guy.
Yeah,
Austin Carr.
Yeah,
he plays for who does he play for now? Or who did he?
That's a different Austin Carr.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, he played for Notre Dame in the 70s, but yeah,
Oh,
he's considered like the best scorer in March Madness history.
Fuck.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but
I
50 points a game over 7 games.
Yeah, 50 points a game for 7 games. Yeah, so it's insane.
Jesus, fuck.
Well, shit.
I can do that on 2K, but
yeah,
I can barely do that on 2K.
Oh, that's sad, Skyler.
Well, you know what? I don't play a lot of 2K. I'd much rather play my grand strategy games on my laptop.
He plays FIFA.
Oh,
yeah.
Brady,
Yes.
Just to say this for Christian Leitner, because I have to bring it back. 2-time NCAA champion, 2-time NCAA All-Tourney, 4-time NCAA All-Region, NCAA Tourney Most Valuable Player, 1991 and 1992 AP Player of the Year, Wooden Award, Rupp Trophy, Naismith Award, 1991 and 1992 ACC Player of the Year.
You can't go into all those awards. It didn't happen during.
Okay,
during
so then never mind. 2-time NCAA champion, 2-time NCAA All-Tourney, 4-time NCAA All-Region, and NCAA Tourney Most Valuable Player. So he did have consistent every single time he was in the tourney, he was at least all region. And he went to the
Unfortunately, but they didn't keep the statistics like that for Bill Russell back in
which
the
I'm
90s,
sure he would
so.
have been too. But he went to every year he stepped into March Madness, they went to the Final Four.
Yeah,
Duke went to the Final Four.
And he scored the most points in March Madness history.
He did.
I don't know. As a North Carolina fan, I fucking hate Christian Leitner, so I'm not going to put him
Oh,
on the
I hate.
fucking list.
I hate.
You're a North Carolina fan?
Outside of Wisconsin, hell yeah, I love the Tar Heels. I've always loved the Tar Heels.
I did not know that.
I got to give it to Duke. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, like, Duke has been the better program, but I fucking hate Duke. I hate Duke with a fucking.
I hate Duke.
Why do you?
Passion.
Okay. Why do you hate Duke?
2015 championship game.
Yeah, there you go. That partially.
Oh, when they beat Wisconsin.
When they beat Wisconsin.
Okay.
Fuck those fucking refs in that goddamn game.
And Bo Ryan for fucking putting Trayvon Jackson in.
Yeah.
When he was fucking up our flow.
We've argued about that before. I've always been a Michael Jordan fan. Jordan went to North Carolina. North Carolina hates Duke. Fuck Duke.
Makes sense.
I love Coach K. I think they've made great players. I have no issue with the program or with the team themselves. I just fucking hate Duke. So
okay, makes sense.
So yeah, call it bias or whatever. But fuck.
Well,
Duke.
I love Jason Tatum, so that's why I like Duke. So
yeah, so fuck you too. All right, so then Skylar, you pick the next topic. So let's why don't you rattle off what the next topic's going to be for our what's list?
Speaking of Coach K, we're going to do top 5 best college basketball coaches since the year 2000, so 21st century. We can do men's or women's basketball.
Okay, I was just about to ask.
Because that's fucking. Yeah, 3 of my 5 right now are ladies. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, no, because I mean what UConn did and with
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
R.I.P. Dude. Oh my God.
What they did, they deserve to be recognized, and you know what, they totally. I mean, both them outclassed the men's programs at their schools many times.
Just pure dominance.
We'll do men's and women's best college coaches. Top 5 since the year 2000, so 21st century.
Okay.
It has to be like the year 2000. If the year was like
basically we're doing the 2000
March
Madness through what would technically be the 2018 one, or 2019 because we didn't get the 2020 March Madness. So 19 seasons is what that'll be. But all right, cool. So now let's move on to our team of the day. The Los Angeles Rams, the team that had, in my mind, probably the worst all-around offseason, but we'll get into it here in a minute. The Rams went 9-7 last season. They were 3-3 in division. They only had 2 wins against teams who were above 500. They had multiple streaks where they won their first 3 games, lost their next 3 games. They were losers of 2 of their last 3. Their only wins against teams who were above 500 were against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 14 and against the New Orleans Saints in Week 2, the game that Drew Brees broke his hand and then led to the Teddy Bridgewater just 5 straight games he won as a starting quarterback, something like that. Before we get into their free agent losses and their free agent gains here, boys, where do you put the Los Angeles Rams? In need of a rebuild, or in need of a rebuild, in or in need of a reload, 8-8 playoff tier, or Super Bowl caliber tier?
I'm going to say they need a rebuild. I think they're really similar to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to call it like the Patriot effect because they played them in the Super Bowl, and since that Super Bowl loss, it's just gone to shit for them. And right now, I really don't believe in Jared Goff as their franchise quarterback. There's no one really on that offense I believe in as a building block. The only building blocks I see on the L.A. Rams our team is Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, to be honest. So I think they have the right coach in Sean McVay, but I think they just need to start from scratch.
See, I think they need a reload, not a rebuild. I think that they need to reload some of those key positions on defense. I mean, when we get into their offseason, we'll see how much of that they lost. And I think that I agree. I don't think Jared Goff is their franchise quarterback, but I still think he's got another year in him where you can see what he can do. After this next year, then I would actually start evaluating your quarterback position, seeing what you need to do. I think they need to reload at some of their weapons because they have some good weapons, but they're always injured, which is the key. So I would say they need a reload. They need some more They need some more reliable weapons on the offensive side, and they need just new strength in some key defensive positions. I don't think that they're in a rebuild mode quite yet, but if they have another bad season, they are.
I'm going to put this team as an 8-8 tier. I put them in kind of football purgatory because they do have some really good pieces on that team. I'm not as much of a Goff hater. I'm a little bit more of a Sean McVay hater. I've always had an issue with Sean McVay. I've never thought that he was the wonder kid that a lot of people said that he was. To me, this team doesn't remind me of the Falcons. This team reminds me of the Super Bowl 47 Ravens post them winning. Because if you look at it, they've lost a lot of coaching. You know, they lost their QB coach who eventually went to Tennessee and then Green Bay. They lost their offensive coordinator, Zach Taylor, who went to be head coach of the Bengals. They've lost a lot around there. And I also feel like, sort of similar to the Ravens, what the Rams did when they did go to the Super Bowl was, and this has been well documented, is that when they first went to Los Angeles, the owner was very upset because no fans were in the stands. Because unless they were playing primetime games, there were as many, if not fewer, fans at the Coliseum than they had in St. Louis. And so it wasn't making sense that they moved to Los Angeles. So the owner really forced Sean McVay and the GM and stuff to make the massive trades that they did and to pick up the massive free agents that they did to build a win now team that had no ability to build consistently. And now we're seeing how badly that's bitten them in the ass because they gave up trade assets so they can't build their offensive line. They drafted pretty much exclusively skilled position players in order to hope that some guys pop. They made trades for guys like Brandon Cooks. They signed guys like Aqib Talib, guys who were older, who could still produce but were on shorter contracts. And so when you do that, you stunt the growth of your team and your ability to build a successful organization. And now you're seeing that they unfortunately have to reap what they sowed on that. I think this team has the building blocks to be successful. I think that the NFC West is a little bit more wide open than people say because I don't have full faith in Kyle Shanahan, not consistently. I like Sean McVay as a coach. I'm not in love with him as a coach. I don't think he's the fucking football guru that everybody said he was. So I'm going to put them at 8-8 because I think they're good enough to beat a lot of the other teams, but they're not good enough to go mano-a-mano with the above 500 or the playoff caliber teams in the NFL right now. So I think they stay in that football purgatory for a little bit. So let's talk about their free agent pickups and their losses. So just to run through some losses, they lost pretty much everyone. Brandon Cooks, they trade to Houston. Todd Gurley, halfback, leaves to go to Atlanta. Dante Fowler Jr., outside linebacker, leaves to go to Atlanta. Corey Littleton, who we talked about on the Raiders episode, inside linebacker, was Studley, went to the Raiders. Nickel Roby-Coleman, their corner, went to Philadelphia. Greg Zuerlein, their kicker, went to Dallas. And then really not many pickups. The only ones of note, Leonard Floyd, outside linebacker from Chicago, and A'Shawn Robinson, defensive tackle from Detroit. So how do you guys grade the Rams offseason?
I think for losses, it's got to be an F just because they lost so much. I mean, Todd Gurley, their number one running back. Brandon Cooks, I think their number one wide receiver. Dante Fowler Jr., their number one pass rusher. Corey Littleton, their number one inside linebacker. Greg Zuerlein, one of the better kickers in the league. And then Nicole Roby-Coleman, one of the top, nickel guys. I just think, they lost so much talent, especially on the defensive side, that it's going to regress really badly for them. And then for gains, I think, I don't know, maybe like a D+. I mean, Leonard Floyd kind of was promising, but he's kind of dipped. So maybe they can get something out of him and get him to what Chicago saw in him. And then A'Shawn Robinson, I don't know. I think since college he's been kind of overhyped and he's just kind of a solid guy right now. So F for losses, D+ for gains.
All in all, it's just a bad offseason, I think, whether it's losses or gains. I think that they were like Brady said, they put themselves in a position with big contracts and with trading away draft picks that they didn't really have capital to, have a good offseason. They needed picks. They needed other assets. They didn't have money in order to keep some of these really good guys around because these guys were like, we're really good. We deserve big contracts. And the Rams can all just go like, we can't give you the money for it because too many people are too good.
Or the issue would be that they gave guys such massive contracts that they couldn't afford it. I mean, Jared Goff is on a huge contract.
Yeah.
Fucking Jalen Ramsey right now.
Yeah, no, and
They're
I think that trade. I think that
Fucking-
trade honestly hurts him.
Yeah, it kills him. It kills him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, it's just kind of like, I mean, like we said, like ownership issues aside, GM issues aside, or specifically ownership. I think that the GM and the coach they have in place are relatively good, and they can do things. I think that they can make the most of what they have available, which I can't say about a lot of front office coach combinations in the NFL. But yeah, that free agency is a bad free agency and the fact that they have good players that they haven't been able to re-sign, that haven't re-signed other places. Like I think of like Eric Weddle, like yeah, he's older, but he's still a pretty good defensive player. I mean, you could try to get him to some kind of contract, but things haven't happened. And with the offseason that we're having with COVID-19, it just all in all hurts the Rams more than helps them at all.
Yeah, I give their offseason just a big fat fucking F. I'm going to put the Jalen Ramsey trade in there. I know that was their regular season. There are very few players to me who are worth multiple first-round picks. Khalil Mack, I obviously think was one. I think that even though the Raiders as an organization are probably in a better position, the Bears are still going to be a playoff contender just because he's on that team. I would say probably Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, Lamar Jackson.
Jake Kumaro.
Yeah. But then the list gets very difficult as to worth 2 first-round picks and then as much money in cap as you're going to have to pay him to keep him there. There's very few players who are worth that. And while I like Jalen Ramsey, I think he's a stud corner, he's not worth 2 first-round picks. 2 first-round picks that could have gone to completely replace this offensive line instead of having to re-sign older and older players in order to help out on their offensive line. The cap hit that they took in both the Brandon Cooks trade as well as the Todd Gurley trade was astronomical. That cap hit alone in the Todd Gurley trade, I think, was north of $20 million. Would have been enough to sign, or at least put them in contention to sign bigger named offensive line players like Jack Conklin. But instead, this team is going to eat so much in dead cap that they can't build a successful team. And that goes to just ownership purely, because ownership needs fans in the stands in order to justify not only the team being in Los Angeles, but to justify the new stadium that they're building. And you can't have fans in the stands if you don't have big name players. So then you have to go and trade for Jalen Ramsey, and you have to re-sign your big name players to these massive contracts to keep them happy. And this, you're seeing it right now. This is biting this team in the ass. I give their offseason a big fat fucking F. Leonard Floyd only showed up when they were playing the Packers. That was pretty much it. He was absolutely non-existent other times. A'Shaun Robinson, I think he's pretty good. 40 tackles, 1.5 sacks. I think he's okay. He'll go okay with Aaron Donald, but I have questions as to the pass rush. You lost Dante Fowler, who was 11.5 sacks. The run game has huge question marks. I know they drafted, which we'll get to here. Other parts of the wide receiver core has question marks. And then defensively, it's all just a question mark. I mean, Eric Weddle's not on the team anymore. They've got some good younger players, but there's just huge questions defensively. The linebacker position is a massive question mark for them, especially with the loss of Corey Littleton. So I give it a big fat fucking F.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not Sean McVay's fault.
Yeah, it's not.
As much as it's ownership's fault and even the general manager's fault, because there's really nothing that they could have done. But at the same time, it's their fault because there was no reason to cut Todd Gurley. None. We have not been given a good reason as to why they cut Todd Gurley. Was it because of arthritis in the knee? Was it because he had issues with coaching? What was it? But we haven't been given a good fucking reason. And with the cap money that they lost in that, it makes no fucking sense to me at all.
Well, it's very obvious that it's getting to the point that the Rams knew something about Todd Gurley that the rest of the NFL didn't. It's either because when the season started and everybody's like, Todd Gurley's fine. Todd Gurley's fine after seeing him drop in the playoffs against the Patriots and against some other teams.
Well, he didn't even play in the NFC Championship game against the Saints.
Yeah, where it's like Todd Gurley's fine. Todd Gurley's fine. And we're all sitting here going like, obviously Todd Gurley's not fine. So there's something about it It's like there's something that we need to know. And they chose, instead of telling us and letting us figure it out and telling us what's actually happened, they left it to our imagination, and that kind of spiraled into him having to leave the team and joining the Falcons. I don't know if Todd Gurley again would have been worth the money that they had him at.
He wouldn't have not been. He would
because
not
he wasn't performing at the level of the money that he was asking for.
But it also wasn't worth the cap hit that they lost. They saved no money on cutting him.
Which is true. But I think that might have had more to do with the GM and the coaches say than the owner, because I'm sure if like we're agreeing the owner wants big name players and everything, the owner doesn't want Todd Gurley gone. But the other McVay and their GM, who I can't remember his name to save the life of me. Thank you. We're probably like we have players that can fill his position right now.
And with that, I mean, I understand your point. I just think it's absolute shit. Gurley, he had a bad season, like no doubt about it. Only 857 rushing yards. He had over 1,000 all-purpose, but he still scored 12 touchdowns. And for a team that offensively was anemic the way that the Rams were, he wasn't worth the money that they were going to pay him. But it honestly would have been cheaper to just pay him the money and have him play half snaps and let some of your other guys get snaps. Than it would, and then cut him the next year when the cap hit wouldn't be as bad than it was to just outright cut him. And we haven't gotten a solid reason for it. And I don't understand the thought process on doing that, you know?
Yeah. I get it.
So let's move into their draft. The Rams had 9 draft picks in large part due to the Brandon Cooks trade. They did not have a first-round pick because they gave that to Jacksonville. And I think Jacksonville turned around and used that to draft a linebacker. So their first pick in the second round, pick number 52, was Cam Akers, halfback out of Florida State. Their second pick number 57 in the second round, Van Jefferson, wide receiver out of Florida. Third round, they had 2 third-round picks. At the 84th overall was Terrell Lewis, edge rusher from Alabama. The 104th overall pick was Terrell Burgess, safety out of Utah. In the 4th round at 136, they picked Bryson Hopkins, tight end out of Purdue. And then they had a 6th-round pick at number 199, Jordan Fuller, safety out of Ohio State, and then 3 7th-round picks. They went with Clay Johnston, linebacker out of Baylor, Sam Solomon, kicker out of the University of Miami, Ohio, and pick number 250, Tremaine Ankrum, guard from Clemson. So how do you guys grade their draft? Anybody of note at all?
This is hard. I'd say I'd give it a solid C. There's a handful of guys that I like that I think could contribute. I think Akers is definitely, a really good back to put in that stable of backs, because I don't think they're going to have a starter. I think they're going to go with a stable kind of approach. So I definitely think he could be a nice weapon in there. Terrell Lewis, if he's able to recover fully and be healthy from his injury, I think he definitely could help with the loss of Dante Fowler. Now, granted, I don't think he's going to get double-digit sacks, but he can at least help replace some of that production. And then Terrell Burgess, another great Utah defender. I think he can help the secondary losses. And Bryson Hopkins, I'm kind of interested to see how he performs. The tight end position, I don't know, it's been a little lackluster in my opinion with the Rams, so hopefully he can help with that. Those are the only guys of note I see from this class.
Yeah, looking on the upside of this, like if looking at what some of these players can produce, I'm gonna go with a B-. Like, I'm gonna be optimist. I'm gonna go B-, because I like Cam Akers. I think he fits kind of with what modern NFL offenses want to do. He's a little bit smaller, but very elusive. Has really good speed, especially in the open field. He can, like, using him out of the backfield, I think that they can get him some good reps in there. They can work him into the system, do some good things. Van Jefferson, I think that he's a pretty good route runner. He's got really good releases on his routes. He looked good on tape. I mean, he's not the fastest person in the world, and he needs to improve after the catch. But I think that just kind of like some things that young wide receivers struggle with, which is route running and releasing, I think he does pretty good things with. I agree with Mitch. If Terrell Lewis, if they're able to help that injury stuff, I think that he gives them a nice young pass rusher, because he did some pretty good things with Bama. And then I love my Utah defenders. I love Utah defenders. They're great. I love them. I think that you're seeing in this draft, how many times have we brought up a Utah defender and being like, this was a steal, this was great, because it is. He's a veteran. He was a veteran on that defensive backfield, and he brings that mentality to a defense, and I think that helps replace some of the losses they had. But again, it's not the best. And then I love when the kickers drafted. It might be the Nebraskan in me, like seeing like so many Nebraska kickers get drafted, but I absolutely love it. This guy hit 4 out of his 5 field goals from over 50 yards. That's awesome. I love it.
What did you say about this kid from Nebraska?
No, I'm saying that he wasn't from Nebraska. It's the Nebraska kid in me.
Oh, okay. All right.
That loves kickers getting drafted. Yeah, he hit 4 of his 5 field goals from 50 yards out. And I mean, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, he might be from Miami of Ohio, but you know what? If there's one thing you can be like, kicking is kicking no matter where you're at. Like that's what you can kind of say that. So I love that.
Sure.
I think that it helps with their line. But the rest of the players, I think they're depth level players that could produce well, but they're not of note. I think the first 4 did really well, but later draft picks, I'm not so as sure.
Yeah, and then really quick, actually, breaking sports news, former Ole Miss, Auburn, Texas Tech Cincinnati head coach Tommy Tuberville just beat Jeff Sessions for his GOP primary seat in Alabama. So that's
the Republican nominee?
It's for the Republican, the GOP seat. But former head coach of multiple college football programs getting into politics. So, hey, that's breaking news right here on Fourth String Sports Podcast.
At least he's not like, at least they're not like the GOP's not nominating like, a child rapist this year.
This year, yeah. So then my grade, I give them the lowest grade I've given any team in the draft so far. I give them a big D+. And I give them a big D+, not because of the players that they drafted, but because no one here is an obvious organizational need, with the exception of Cam Akers. I like Cam Akers. I like Cam Akers a lot. I've liked him at Florida State. I thought he was as good, if not better, than Dalvin Cook at Florida State. I just think he was part of worse Florida State teams. I mean, this dude put up 1,144 rushing yards, 225 receiving yards, and 18 total touchdowns his senior season. Van Jefferson, I do not like. I think he played in a weak SEC East division, and when he went up against actual competition, his numbers were lackluster at best. Terrell Lewis, I'm not sold on. Terrell Burgess, I love that pick. Again, Utah, this was a kid who got limited snaps his first 3 seasons, but then when he got the chance to start, he balled out, absolutely balled out. Bryson Hopkins, I don't believe he's a solid tight end. I think that he's unfortunately a product of an air raid offense in Purdue, and his numbers end up getting inflated. I didn't like the tape on him. I'm not a huge fan of Bryson Hopkins. Jordan Fuller, not sold on Ohio State. And then in the later rounds, the 7th round, the only pick I do like is actually Sam Sloman. I understand why they cut Greg Zuerlein. Greg Zuerlein was 24 of 33 on field goals for 72.7%. That was his second lowest field goal percentage last season. Greg Zuerlein last season was also only 5 of 11 from 40 to 49 yards, which is abysmal in football. 40 to 49 yards means that you're taking the ball anywhere from about the 23 to the 32-yard line, and you're not able to convert that into points, 6 times. That's the difference in a lot of games. So the Sam Sloman pick I actually like. I think the 7th round is when you pick kickers and not the 2nd round, and I'm looking at you, Tampa Bay, from a couple seasons ago. This kid was 34 of 35 on extra points and 26 of 30 on field goals. I think he was great. It's just they didn't draft an offensive lineman until the 7th round. Like, why do we have to keep saying this about teams? Like, even though they only had 2, they didn't have a first-round pick. In both of their second-round picks, there were solid offensive linemen, Josh Jones and Ezra Cleveland, who were available to be picked. So why don't you pick them over Van Jefferson? Cam Akers would have been there at 57. So why not invest in the offensive line where you desperately need help instead of having to re-sign these fucking 36-year-old motherfuckers who are getting older and older? Like, why not do this? I don't understand. Like, it blows my goddamn mind. And this is where, like, I lose faith in the GM and the coach because they choose Cam Akers, I understand. You cut Todd Gurley, which was a stupid move, but you needed his replacement. The wide receiver position is, to me, one of the only strong positions that this team has.
But like I said,
and then defensively, I don't
Brady,
understand. This is the worst draft that I've seen.
They do need help on that. They losing Dante Fowler Jr. You need a new edge rusher.
And you're right. So you picked an injured kid out of Alabama.
Well, okay, but I mean, they still try to fill. We don't even
know if he's going to be able to play.
But Brady, they did have needs that they didn't need to fill, and it just so happened an offensive line fell lower on that list because they felt they needed to rebuild their defense, which I agree. And for the wide receiver pick, as much as I love Cooper Kupp, who I think is who I think is one of the better wide receivers, especially slot wide receivers in the NFL, he's injured consistently. He hasn't had a full healthy season since he's been with the Rams. And you need. I know that Van Jefferson.
A lot of wide receivers, though.
You could, but what I'm saying is that Cooper Kupp actually puts up the numbers. But when he is injured a lot, you need another piece on that, especially after losing Brandon Cooks. You need another wide receiver to plug in there. So while I understand your sentiment, I understand that they really need offensive line help, and they had there are people at the offensive line position that they could have picked. As much as I can say, I don't think that they didn't address some of their needs as a franchise. They did. They were trying to address their needs. Whether or not they actually address those needs and they solve those questions, I'll agree with you. It's iffy, but they were at least attempting to.
And that's where I'll disagree, because Cooper Kupp only missed 2 games last year. He played more games than guys like Devontae Adams did. Robert Woods had 90 catches for 134 yards. He played in 15 games. Tyler Higbee, and this goes back to the tight end position. I don't quite understand his choice to pick that.
I agree with the
69 receptions, 734 yards, 3 touchdowns. He averaged nearly 50 yards a game. Gerald Everett, even the backup tight end, averaged 31 yards a game on a few catches. I think that they need assistance.
I agree with the tight end pick.
I felt like the Cam Akers pick alone could have made up for some of the deficiencies at wide receiver, because you can throw it to him out of the backfield. If you're going to go edge rusher because you need it, and I agree that they need it, then they should have done that in the earlier rounds. But instead,
by then, all of
the 57th pick on Van Jefferson, who I think would have been there at 84, when instead you chose to go with Terrell Lewis. I think Jefferson could have even been there later. I think we even talk about had they not picked Jefferson, and then in the 7th round picked guys like KJ Hill or Devin Duvernay or other people who would have been available at that time, I'm more confident in this Rams team. But to not address your aging offensive line until your very last pick, when this was a deep class at both the guard and the tackle and even the center position, is astronomically infuriating to me.
It's almost like not drafting a wide receiver, right?
No, because if I have a good offensive line, I don't give a shit who my wide receivers are. They're going to get open. You can have the best wide receivers in the world, but if your offensive line can't pass protect for 3 seconds, like we saw the Rams can't do, it doesn't fucking matter who you have at quarterback or at offensive line. I don't understand it. I wish I could have been in the war room with them and just slapped McVay across the face and been like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
It's Les Snead, bro.
I don't give. Well, Les Snead, fucking McVay.
He's in charge of it.
The scouting. I don't give a. I'd bitch slap the both of them because I just want to know what the thought process here is. Van Jefferson, I don't understand. Again,
I've seen worse drafts. I have seen worse drafts. We have gone over worse drafts since then. Yes. Jacksonville and Green Bay stick out in my mind right
now. No. Because those two teams are on different ends of the spectrum. I put this team as an 8-8 in absolute purgatory, and no one in this draft pulls them out of purgatory. The Green Bay draft was solid because it kept them at a playoff caliber tier, and I thought that parts of the Jacksonville draft was solid because it allows them to sort of rebuild. As well as you talk about Jacksonville gets the Rams' first-round pick next year, which is probably going to be a good one as well.
We've come to agree that we don't agree on the Green Bay draft, and I don't because if we're using the same logic, the Green Bay draft doesn't lift them out of a playoff contention to a Super Bowl contender team, and it should have. They had the picks to lift them to Super Bowl.
There's a difference between being a playoff contender and being in that fucking 8-8 purgatory. Just look at the goddamn Buffalo Bills for the last 25 fucking seasons.
Which I agree, but I'm also saying that the Rams have the tools and then they have the tools in order to improve within the organization. That's That's what they did. Corey Littleton, when he got into the NFL, was not seen as a great draft pick. He was not seen as a great producer, and the Rams turned him into what he became. So I think that the Rams are doing a better job of developing their players than some other teams like the Bills or the Jaguars or like multiple teams in the NFL. So like, what I'm saying is, yes, this team might be in purgatory right now, but I don't see it. That's going to be the same. And I'm going to have to look into more drafts and more free agencies because I feel like with what they had going into this draft, they did pretty well. But that's just
you would hope that they'd be able to develop their guys better if they were in the Super Bowl 2 fucking seasons ago.
exactly.
The Bills and the Jaguars weren't. The Jaguars got pretty close, but that was because Blake Bortles was their fucking quarterback. That's the reason they didn't get any further. It's just this team lost so much production in so many places across the field. Didn't address it in the way that they needed. Again, what comes back to bite them in the ass is the Jalen Ramsey trade. Made absolutely zero sense to do so. Had they kept that first-round pick, then they could have addressed the corner position in the first round. They could have addressed the offensive line in the first round. And instead, this draft feels really good. But instead, to me, I look at this list and I see probably about 5 to 6 wasted of their 9 picks. And even the 3 that I really like, I'm not 100% sold on because I don't know any halfback who can run behind the offensive line that the Rams are going to field. That's my massive
Barry
issue.
Sanders.
Maybe Barry Sanders. Maybe. And that's just how bad this offensive line is going to be. But we can agree to disagree here. So let's move on to their schedule. We've talked about the Rams quite a few times. Go back, listen to literally every episode. I'm sure they make an appearance in quite a few. We talked about them with Chicago. We talked about them with Arizona twice. Dallas, Buffalo, the whole 9 yards. Go back, listen to all those. Woody, blah, blah. So week 1, they start the season out. They host the Dallas Cowboys. I have them absolutely losing this game with the absolute liabilities that there's in terms of the in terms of the Rams secondary. And at the linebacker position, I think that Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb just go off on them. Dallas wins that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Dallas is going to open up a can of whoop-ass on the Rams. I think it's going to be a pretty bad defeat, and the Rams are going to be remembering, I remember when we were that good and that kind of stuff. They have Jalen Ramsey in the Rams defense, and he'll probably cover Amari Cooper, but you still got to worry about, Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, and I don't think they have the corners to cover that. And I just think that the Dallas defense is going to, hold the Jared Goff offense pretty well. So Cowboys win.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. I think that just the lack of good players at the linebacker position really hurt them, especially when you have all the weapons that the Dallas Cowboys have that you can just use it to exploit really anything in that middle of the defense.
Alrighty, week 2 matchup. They then go to Philadelphia. We didn't even touch on the Philadelphia news, but Philadelphia re-signed Jason Peters. They're going to end up playing him at the guard position, so the bodyguard is back.
It's almost like they listen to this podcast.
I was actually super disappointed because it was the last couple of days, all we've heard is big news coming out of Philadelphia, massive news coming out of Philadelphia. This could be a game changer. And then it's just that they re-signed Jason Peters. I was expecting a Jamal Adams trade, frankly. But even with Jason Peters now playing, I still – oh, no, I'm lying. Now that they added Jason Peters on this, I actually have Philadelphia winning this game. Without Jason Peters, I did think that the Rams would have a solid chance because I thought Aaron Donald would do well. Philadelphia wins this game. Even though they've got maybe some unproven weapons, I still like their weapons. I think Zach Ertz is going to have a field day because who do the Rams have to realistically cover him? And then defensively, I think that the Eagles have improved enough to hold the liability of an offensive line that the Rams have. I think Fletcher Cox has a great day in this game. Rams start out 0-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Eagles are going to beat the Rams. Just kind of like the points that you were saying, I think that Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are really going to expose the back seven because, like you said, who's going to cover them? It's going to be a huge mismatch. And then I just think that Eagles defensive line is going to be like a kid in the candy shop to go against that weak-ass L.A. Rams offensive line. So Eagles win big.
Yeah. I think it's honestly the running back that the Philadelphia has, Miles Sanders. Is that right?
Yep. Miles Sanders, yeah, he's great. I love him.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a heyday. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people expect it to be. I honestly think that Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey kind of hold their own a little bit because I still am not sold on the passing weapons that they have. But I still think that Miles Sanders is becoming a beast onto his own. And that offensive line with Jason Peters now there is going to be able to run the ball. So I have to give it to Philly.
Yeah. You know what I just realized we haven't even touched on?
What's that?
How fucking ugly the Rams jerseys are.
Brady, we don't have another hour for you to talk about the Rams jerseys.
So far, this is our shortest episode.
You've had your Rams rant.
You've had your Ram uniforms rants.
Fucking
you've had your Rams rant.
Fucking goddamn those fucking Rams jerseys they look like they're the ugliest motherfuckers I've probably ever seen. The Rams jersey was beautiful. The old fucking royal blue with the
should
gold.
Should we just mute ourselves for the next 20 minutes?
Beautiful.
And just let them rant?
I don't want to.
And they ruin this shit, and it's so frustrating to me. Fuck. That's it. I'm done now.
Are you sure?
Maybe.
I was just about to meet you.
I'm gonna say that the Rams will win another fucking game because of their goddamn jerseys. Fucking week 3 at Buffalo. I have them losing this game. Buffalo's defense is way too fucking good. I like what Buffalo's going to bring to the table. I think the pass rush is slowly getting there, but on the secondary, they're really strong. And then offensively, there's no reason now for Josh Allen not to perform because of the acquisition of Stephon Diggs. I think Dawson Knox is coming up. I like Buffalo in this matchup. Buffalo wins. The Rams start out 0-3.
0-3?
0-3. No, 0-3. I have them losing all 3 games so far.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I don't know. It's been a day. Yeah, I have the Bills beating the Rams as well. Like you said, I just think that defense is so dominant that I don't think the offense is going to get anything done. And then to your points, if Josh Allen can't perform well against this kind of defense, I think his hot seats increase by like 5 or 10. So yeah. I have the Bills winning this.
It might be me being a Patriot fan, but I have no faith in Josh Allen. I mean, I'm not no faith, but like the thing is the idea of like he has no reason not to perform. He'll find a reason not to perform. That being said, again, the lack of the players at linebacker for this Rams defense, which honestly carried them for a long time, especially during that Super Bowl run, it's exploited by Singletary, right, the running back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Singletary, Stephon Diggs is there now. Cole Beasley. Again, the lack of any decent players in that middle of that field makes it for Buffalo to carry this game. So 0-3 for the Rams.
Alrighty, so week 4 matchup, they get to head home and they play the Giants. I have them winning this game. Probably the only team. I feel like I say this with a lot of teams, but probably the only team that has a worse offensive line than the Rams is the Giants, unfortunately. But at least the Giants addressed it in the fucking draft. The Rams win this game. I think that the Rams defense is going to do enough to hold Saquon and Daniel Jones. I don't have faith in Daniel Jones. He had some bad games last season, but I think that he's growing. My thing is that the Giants defense just has massive question marks on it. The secondary position is an absolute toss up, and I think this is the game where Goff kind of gets it connected, and the Rams pick up their first win of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you yet again. I think the Rams are going to get their first win here. The Giants, I think, are a little bit worse team to the Rams right now. Right now, the Giants' offense is basically just Saquon Barkley, and I agree with you. I think that whole defense is a question mark, and it doesn't help that one of your starting corners might go to jail for robbing people at a party. So,
yeah. Actually, one sec. Something doesn't add up.
How the Rams suck so bad?
No, on my schedule. I have to look at it. One sec. On here.
I swear to God, I will. I'll have them lose every fucking game because of those jerseys. I was so goddamn.
I just had to double check because I had to reset my computer last night. But yeah, I do have the Giants winning this game. I don't know what it is. I don't like Giants teams really. I really don't. It might have something to do with them beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl twice.
You think?
Yeah, but I do like Daniel Jones. I do like Saquon Barkley. I do like some of the players they have. They're really scrappy players. I really like that. They're players that don't really want to give up, really. And I think that this is a kind of game where they can win. I think Saquon's responsible for a couple wins as just the tailback, like we talked about Deshaun Watson, and we talked about Minshew being responsible for some wins. I think Saquon Barkley can get some wins. Not really in the running game with Aaron Donald up there, but getting out in the passing game with, again, no linebacking core to speak of, nobody to really get there quick enough to stop him. I think New York can win this game.
I think one of the interesting things to watch in this game is Evan Ingram. He
Yeah.
hasn't lived up to potential with the Giants. This is the game where it could be like his contract game. If he's able to ball out, it could guarantee him a new contract there. All right, so then at the quarter mark of the season, Skylar, you have the Rams at 0-4. Me and Mitch, you have them both at 1-3. Week 5 matchup, they then go to Washington to play a team whose name we don't know yet.
I'm going with the Red Wolves. I like it.
I'm going to say the Foreskins.
I'm going Code Talkers.
Code Talkers. All right, so week 5 matchup at the Washington Foreskins. I have them winning this game. I have them picking up another win. Washington's strength is that defensive line, and this is where it's going to be intriguing because the Rams' weakness is that offensive line. Here's the thing, though, is that I'm not sold on Washington in the earlier part of the season because I think that with a brand new head coach and with COVID, it's going to affect them, as well as one of Washington's wide receivers. I can't remember his name right now.
Kelvin Harmon.
There you go. Kelvin Harmon just tore his Achilles, I think.
ACL.
He's going to be out for the season. So in a team that already has very few weapons, that's another one that's gone. I see that the Rams get their second win of the season here.
Oh, you do have the Rams winning. Okay. Yeah, I have the Rams getting their second win right here. I think this matchup truly is a coin toss, and the only reason why I'm picking the Rams over the Washington to be determined name team is because I think the Rams have a slightly better offense than Washington does. With Dwayne Haskins, it's still kind of a question mark of how he's going to perform. They really only have Terry McLaurin at wide receiver.
You got it right.
Yeah, right. And then at tight end, their top 2 tight ends are gone now, and they only have one real offensive lineman on that line, and they're trusting 35, 36-year-old Adrian Peterson to be their bell cow. So I'll trust the Rams offense over what Washington's going to put out. So Rams win this one.
Yeah, but I have to give it to the Rams too. I think that the stability on the offense, honestly, is what carries the day for them. I mean, having Jared Goff has been in the system for 3 years now, having Cooper Kupp and some of those wide receivers, Robert Woods, against this the defensive backfield for the whatever name they'll be. I think that honestly carries the day. I think Cam Akers could actually have a pretty good game here, where he's out he can get to the second part of the defense, second level of the defense, can be used in the passing game pretty well. I think he actually has a pretty good game, and I think that's what carries Washington.
All right, week 6 matchup. The Rams have to go to San Francisco to play division rival Niners. I have them losing this game. Niners' strength is that defensive line. They just they've played so well against the Rams, even when the Rams were 13-3. The Niners have played really well. I think that the Niners are going to be able to run the ball down the Rams' throat, even if it's not Raheem Mostert who's there, who did demand a trade. Defensively, I don't think the Rams are going to get any traction. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams split a series with the Niners. In fact, I have them split in a series because I think with a division game, it's going to be close. But on the Week 6 matchup, I say the Rams lose to the Niners.
I have the Niners beating the Rams in this game. Like you pointed out, I think the big matchup that's pretty much going to decide everything is the 49ers defensive line against the Rams offensive line. Jared Goff's going to be lucky if he gets 1.5 seconds to throw the fucking ball. Otherwise, he's just going to get sacked to the ground really hard. And I think that even if Mostert isn't being the lead guy, I think they have enough guys in that stable to do some damage. even with Aaron Donald's, Michael Brocker's kind of interior defensive line. I just think that they're just vastly superior. So 49ers win this one.
I'm actually going to give this one to the Rams, and because I agree with Brady, I think that because of the division that it's in, I think it's a split series. The reason I chose this one instead of the other one is because the Niners come off a bye in the other week, week 12. They come off a bye, so I didn't think that the Niners would lose that game. I think the underrated matchup is going to be the San Francisco Niners defensive backs against the wide receiver core for the Rams, because I mean. It's Richard Sherman's getting old. Yeah, he still had some pretty good games last year. But I think that there are some times where he is not looking. He's a half step behind where he used to be. He's not as dynamic as he used to be. So I think that could honestly decide this game. If Jared Goff is given enough time to throw, I think he could do some damage. So I have to give it to the.
I'm gonna cut out that segment. I'm gonna tweet it at Richard Sherman and see what he says.
He doesn't need any more. He doesn't need any more like reasons to just spite everyone, especially some 21-year-old kid from Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, he's got a ton of things. He's better than me. I mean, he's getting paid millions of dollars to play football, and he has a Stanford education. I mean, I wish I was him.
I'm gonna cut the segment and send it to him and just be like #roast him. Week 7 matchup. They host the Chicago Bears. This team has gone back and forth. These two have gone back and forth the last couple of seasons, with the Rams losing to Chicago when the Bears were 12-4, and then the Rams beating Chicago last season. I have Chicago winning this game. With the questions that the Rams have on the defense or on the offensive line, I like the Bears defense in this. Yeah, they lost Kwiatkowski. I feel like that's going to hurt them, but I don't know if the Rams have the weapons to put up a good enough game against the Bears here. And then I also don't know if the Rams defense is good enough to handle the Bears offense. And that's truly saying something because I think the Bears offense is going to be dog shit again. But I think David Montgomery has a really good game. I think that whoever the quarterback is going to do just enough. I'm going to give this win to the Bears.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Bears are going to get this win. I just think that the disparity between the Bears defense and the Rams offense is just too great. I just think in my mind, the Bears are a top 5 defense, and I think they're going to show it against the Rams. And I think that's all the Bears need to do is have a dominant defensive game to win this. If the offense can be okay, that's just icing on the cake for me. So Bears win this.
There were many times last year where the Bears defense all needed to do was be a dominant defense in order for them to win, and they didn't. I think specifically the Raiders game where they just needed to be dominant, and they weren't, and they lost that game. So like I did in the Chicago episode, I have to give it to Los Angeles. I think that, again, losing some things on the back end of that defense hurts them, especially with the Rams having the wide receiver core that they do. I think Cam Akers, again, could have a good game because that defensive line is really good. But run stopping, I don't know if they can do it. Again, when we're looking at this Rams offensive line, it's interesting what can it do, if anything. And the Bears offense, again, we don't know what it can do. We don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback. Besides Allen Robinson, I don't really know who they can throw to. I mean, they have the 10 tight end set that they could go to. But I think Jalen Ramsey can hold his own against Allen Robinson, so somebody else needs to emerge. And I don't have really any faith in any offensive weapons for them to emerge. So I have to give it to the Rams.
All right. Kissing your own dad's butt there. Okay.
Well, I'm being consistent. I am being consistent.
I'm kissing his butt. You pick the Rams. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm being consistent.
I don't know. You do what you want to do. Week 8 matchup, they go to Miami. I have them absolutely winning this game. Miami just has way too many question marks. Now, I'm going to put a caveat on here. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami wins this game, just because sometimes – I don't know if it's going to be Tua at quarterback, but if it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, sometimes he just pulls a game out of his ass or out of his beard, basically, and pulls out a great win. I'm going to pick the Rams to win this, but this is a very tentative pick.
I have the Rams beating the Dolphins. I've said it multiple times when it comes to the Dolphins. They're just a huge question mark right now, and I can only base the Dolphins off what I saw last year. And I don't expect that much of growth from this team yet. I still think they're a couple years away from being a solid, good team. So I'll have to go with the Rams just because they're a little more established.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that if Miami – I have no idea what to think of Miami until the season starts, honestly, because all I can have – again, all I can do is compare it to last year. Last year, we were dog shit. I love what Brian Flores is doing with that team. I love how they're working. I love how he's building a culture. I love how he's not like you look. The only reason you can like this team is look at Brian Flores' face during that week 1 matchup against the Ravens and look how pissed he looks. That's one reason where you're like, this isn't a coach that's just been like, I'm in a bad team. What can I do? He's like, fuck all of you. You're not playing the way I want you to. So, but I have to give it to the Rams because the Rams defense is too good against the Dolphins. So.
Yeah, his face reminded me of like Scott Frost.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm like Scott Frost is going to turn this team around, whether it's going to be one new win every season if he has to tear it out of people's fucking teeth.
It was very I like Miami, and we'll get to when we have Miami coming up.
Disappointed dad look. That's what it was. It was disappointed dad look.
His look is very much like when you come home with a detention from school and you have to tell your dad about it. Like, that's his look.
Oh, that is exactly what Scott – like, the only time Scott Frost, I think, has ever looked happy on the sideline is when we beat Minnesota, his first win. That was the only time he looked happy. And then after that, he got pissed because they poured Gatorade on his head after he won. He's like, that's not what you do when you beat Minnesota. He's like, that's not what we should be doing when we beat Minnesota. It's like, he's like, that's what you do in a national championship or a Big Ten championship win. You don't do that after you beat Minnesota.
So at the halfway point, me and Mitch both have the Rams at 3 and 5. Skylar, you have the Rams at 4 and 4. Winners of 4 straight after losing 4 straight. So interesting there. Rams have a week 9 bye exactly halfway through the season. They come out of the bye. They take on the Seahawks at home. I have them winning this game. I have them splitting the series with Seattle. They played Seattle pretty well, including last season. I have them winning this because it comes out of a bye, and also because I have questions with the Seattle offensive line. I have questions with the Seattle secondary a little bit. I don't like the Seattle draft. So I'm going to give this to the Rams on the Week 10 matchup.
Yeah, I think this is our first disagreement, Brady.
It is.
I have to pick the Seattle Seahawks to win against the Rams. I'll never doubt Russell Wilson. I just think even when the odds are against him, he finds a way to win. And I think with some better weapons now and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I think is coming into his own as a wide receiver. I think he's got some really nice weapons and just praying that his running backs can stay healthy because it seems like they always get hurt and crushes them. So if they can stay healthy and all that kind of stuff, I feel like they have a better than good enough offense to go against that defense. And then I feel like the Seattle defense is better than the Rams defense. So I think that's kind of a deciding factor.
See, the problem I have with Seattle as a whole is really Pete Carroll. And it's not because he's not a good coach, because he is. It's his inability to innovate. He doesn't want to change from what's won him games. So what's won him Super Bowls, what's won him NCAA championships, which is base defense and run the ball down your throat. And while that can work against some teams and can win you 10 games a season, I think Sean McVay is smarter than that. I think Sean McVay innovates. I think Sean McVay loves that in his systems. So I have to give it to Seattle, or not Seattle, to Los Angeles also, because like Brady said, there's questions on Seattle's team on that defensive line without having Jadeveon Clowney, on that secondary where it's really young, on that offensive line. I mean, as much as I love Russell Wilson and I think that he will win games by himself like he always does, he should be throwing more than he is. And the fact that Pete Carroll wants to just keep running the ball and not using his best offensive weapon with more offensive weapons to throw to, and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, it makes me question some of those coaching decisions, especially when you're on the 1 fucking yard line and you don't run the ball. I want a Super Bowl out of it.
So you wanted to lose that Super Bowl?
No, I'm just saying we should have. We should have lost that Super Bowl, but we didn't.
Skyler wanted to lose Super Bowl.
After, whose catch was it? Was it Doug Baldwin's catch or whatever on the side over there?
Not Doug Baldwin. Jermaine Kearse.
Jermaine Kearse. That was one of the greatest catches in any football game I've ever seen, and it gets completely overshadowed because the next play.
Except for Julian Edelman's in Super Bowl 52. That was a great catch.
That's pretty epic.
That one is definitely up there. I mean, greatest catch ever was David Tyree in Super Bowl 42. I'm sorry. That catch was just – It was a great catch. That whole play was something astonishing. And you know what?
He should have been
maybe out of maybe on a what's list, we'll break down top 5 Super Bowl plays of all time. Something like that. That's always, we have so many subjects to cover with that. So week 11 matchup, they go to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has played the Rams really competitive each time they've played the Rams. But this time Tampa Bay is just way too overwhelming. Tom Brady's going to have a field day. I don't trust the Buccaneers offensive line, but I think he gets the job done. And then defensively, I think they're strong enough. I think that the pass rush is going to get to Jared Goff. It's going to frustrate him. I think literally what's going to happen here is that the Buccaneers are probably going to score on their first 3 drives, and by then the Rams are already out of the game. So Buccaneers win that game, Rams lose.
Oh, yeah, I think that's going to be an easy win for the Buccaneers. I just think with those weapons, I think they're just going to have a fucking field day. And I know you're not sold on the Buccaneers defense, but I think they are solid enough to hold the L.A Rams offense. So Bucs win in a good win.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tom Brady does his he's the most dangerous when he's working over the middle of the field using quick slants, things like that. And what's the weakness of this Los Angeles team on the defense? It's the middle of the field. I think with the weapons that they have, I mean, you can. There's way too many to list. And I think that defense again is better, especially in the back half than on the front half. I agree their defensive line probably needs some work. But their defense does enough to get it done, and their offense picks apart this Los Angeles defense. So I have to give it to Tampa Bay.
Again, and the matchup we're going to go back to here is Rob Gronkowski versus anybody that the Rams have to cover him. Now that's a big question.
Probably Terrell Burgess.
Yeah, is Rob Gronkowski going to be healthy by this time of the season? Because he kind of has an issue with that. But
probably Terrell Burgess would be the only person I can think of on the defense to defend him, and that's a rookie safety.
But even if he's not, they've still got Cameron Brate. They still have O.J. Howard. Their tight end position is stacked.
Yeah.
So then week 12 matchup, they host the San Francisco 49ers. I have them winning this game. I had them splitting the series with San Francisco. I feel like this late in the season, San Francisco is going to have a couple of injuries. It's really, truly just because it's NFC West. In hindsight, I probably would have flipped it had I looked at the San Francisco schedule and seen that San Francisco was coming out of a bye. But with either of the games, doesn't matter to me. I think they go 1-1 in their series.
I think that the 49ers are going to get a clean sweep of the Rams. I just think that even though, it does make sense for them to tie just because of division and how division games get played, but I just think that the levels to this is just too great of a gap for the Rams to get a win. So I think the 49ers get the sweep just because of that.
I give the Niners the win, and the only reason I gave them the win this one instead of the last one is because they're coming off the bye. I think that overall this Niners team is better. Defensively, offensively, coaching, maybe. It depends on the day. But I think that, again, Gerard, I can't talk. Garoppolo does his most dangerous work over the middle of the field, and whether or not he has somebody to throw to, it's George Kittle, and that's enough. So I have to give it to the Niners.
Alrighty, so then, so you're going to give that to the Niners. So,
yeah, Niners win.
Week 13 matchup at Arizona. I have the Rams clean sweeping the Cardinals. The Rams have absolutely destroyed the Cardinals. What?
You have the Rams sweeping the Cardinals?
I do.
Keep talking.
Yeah, explain this to me.
I have the Rams sweeping the Cardinals. And the large reason is because the Cardinals have massive issues on their offensive line. They have massive issues on their defensive line. They have massive question marks in the secondary. McVay has always played really well against the Cardinals. I like the improvements that the Cardinals have made, and I think the Cardinals are going to win more games. I think the Cardinals, as I stated in the previous episodes, are going to do better in the NFC West, but I think the Rams have their number. Gut feeling, I'm going to say that the Rams clean sweep the Cardinals, so they're going to win their Week 13 matchup and their Week 17 matchup against them.
I guess we have another disagreement then. I think the Cardinals are going to win this one against the Rams. I just think that, there is question marks on that offensive line, but I think it's okay. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. But I just think with the weapons they now have in DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, it's kind of pick your poison with that. And they also have Kenyon Drake, who is a really versatile back, and with Kyler Murray, who maybe could take another step or two next season. I just think that could be a really dangerous offense. And with the state that Rams defensive in, they could have a field day. And Yeah, there is some question marks on that defense, but I still think it's good enough to hold whatever kind of offense the Rams put out next year or this year.
Hold on. I got to check something really quick. Go ahead, Skyler.
I have to agree with Mitch on this one. I think that I have the team splitting the series because again it's the NFC West, so I think that it's just a tough division in general. I think that anybody can have anybody's number on any given Sunday. I think that the thing that gives it to me is that they're playing at home, in the dome. I think that they have again the weakness of this Rams team is over the middle. There's not enough defensive backs and linebackers to cover the weapons that the Arizona Cardinals have, whether it's coming out of the backfield or in that wide receiver core. I think it's going to be kind of more of a shootout than they have against the Niners or the Seahawks. But I have to give it to Arizona in this one.
I lied. I do actually have them splitting the series. I have the Cardinals winning the last game. I just thought about that because I wrote it down and then I was like, I knew I had some rationale for this. So no, I lied. I do. I have them. I have the Rams winning this matchup, but I have them losing the Week 17 matchup. So I apologize for that. I also do have to apologize because on the Raiders list, on the Colts list, I had the Colts losing to the Raiders, but then on the Raiders list, I had the Raiders losing to the Colts. The Raiders, I do have beating the Colts. So for that team, instead of going 6-10, I have them going 7-9. So apologize for that. Sometimes I get confused.
It's okay.
Week 14 matches didn't get enough oxygen in the head at birth. Week 14 matchup, they host the New England Patriots. I have them losing this game. I think Bill Belichick is a mastermind. I think that he can win this game eating a Subway sandwich. Shout out. Especially now with the Cam Newton signing. I originally had the Rams winning this game until they signed Cam Newton. I think this is one of the games that gives the Patriots just that little upgrade there. Patriots win, Rams lose.
Yeah, I think the Patriots are going to beat the Rams. And before I get into it, I think that the Subway commercial is basically like Bill Belichick came in and they're like, hey, here's the lines we want you to say in the commercial. And he just sat down on that bench and ate that whole fucking sub and then just fucking left. And so, like, that was only one take. He knows we got to shoot more shots, right? And they'll just have to roll with that footage. But anyways, yeah, I think the Cam Newton signing kind of solidifies this win, even though I don't think they needed him to beat the Rams. I think that the New England defense is more than good enough to handle this Rams offense, and I think that Cam's going to make the Patriots offense a little bit more dynamic, and I think he can utilize those weapons a little bit more just because he's a little bit versatile. So I have the Patriots winning.
Yeah, I have to give it to the Patriots here too. I think that we start seeing the emergence of the Ann Arbor duo in Winovich and Uche, the two young pass rushers they got out of Michigan. I think that they start doing pretty well, and I think it has a lot to do with coverage stacks because the defensive backfield again is probably the best defensive backfield in the NFL. I think they give them time to start developing as pass rushers. And I think this late in the season, they're now holding their own against some offensive lines. This isn't the best offensive line, but I think that Winovich and Uche have a field day against Jared Goff. So I have to give it to New England.
Alrighty, Week 15 matchup. They then host the New York Jets. I have them winning this game. This to me is going to be a shootout because both teams have a terrible defense. It's just when it comes down to it, I like the weapons that the Rams have a little bit more than the weapons that the Jets have. I think offensively, I don't love the Rams defense. I don't love the Jets defense. I like the Jets defense more than the Rams defense, but I love the Rams offense over the Jets offense any day of the week. Way too many questions on the offensive line. Virtually no wide receivers. It's really just Le'Veon Bell. I think that the Rams win that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Rams are going to beat the Jets. And I think it comes down to three advantages the Rams have. I think the Rams have a better head coach. I think they have a better quarterback at this point, and they have better weapons at the wide receiver and tight end position, and that's why the Rams will win.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of you. I think I mean everybody knows how I feel about the New York Jets, so go Rams.
Alrighty, Week 16 matchup. They then go to Seattle. I have them losing this game. This is just it's a end of season Seattle game. Seattle at this point is fighting for playoff positioning, even with that 7th seed. Seattle comes out, dominates the Rams. I think that Russell Wilson is going to have a field day. I think his scrambling is going to be a lot better. The Seahawks have a tendency to usually split the series with teams. I think this is the situation here. So Seahawks win that matchup.
I have the Seahawks getting a sweep of the Rams. I just think that the Seahawks are a really better team, and I just think that the Russell Wilson can will them to a win against the Rams, no matter the situation that they're going to be in.
See, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to have the Rams sweeping the Seahawks. I think that again, it has to do with coaching. I think that it has to do with the fact that Pete Carroll doesn't want to innovate, no matter what. And I think that hurts him. I think that it's gonna end sometime, and it has at different times throughout different seasons and in different playoff scenarios. And I think that when they need it most, it's gonna hurt them because again, I think that the inability to innovate and McVay's ability to innovate, I think, just hurts this team. And I have to go back to the fact that they don't have their defensive backfield, like Brady said, isn't as good as it used to be. The pass rush is not nearly as good as it used to be. I mean, Wagner's probably the best piece on that defense because a lot of the core pieces of the Legion of Boom and even better defenses have left. They don't have Jadeveon Clowney anymore. Their offensive line isn't the best. They do have some better weapons on the wide receiver and tight end position, and they have a good quarterback. But Pete Carroll's going to want to run the ball down their throat, and he's not going to be able to, in my opinion. So I have to give it to Los Angeles.
All right, so the Week 17 matchup against the Cardinals. Again, I have to go back on what I said. I have the Cardinals winning this game. This, to me, is just going to be the knife in the back of the Rams season. The Cardinals win. I think Kyler Murray and some of those weapons are going to be a little bit too overwhelming this time, but I do have them I actually have them splitting the series throughout the entirety of the NFC West, so I have them going 3-3 in division, but Cardinals win this game over the Rams.
And unsurprisingly, I have the Cardinals beating the Rams, so I have the Rams getting swept by the other 3 divisional opponents. I just think that, like I said before in the last time that they play, I just think that the weapons that they have on offense and the offensive whole is really good despite the offensive line, and I think the defense for Arizona is serviceable, and put those two together, and I think they can beat the Rams with that.
I agree with Brady. I mean, I agree with Brady in that they split the series. I just have them winning this game. I think that at the end of the season, Arizona is in a more comfortable place when it comes into playoff picture. That they don't have to try nearly as bad. They have more in the control of their own destiny at this point. And I think that honestly that they're kind of not trying to push it as much because they probably have some injuries trying to rest their quarterback. So I think that Los Angeles kind of wins on a fluke almost. I still think that they can win on their own because it's divisional. And they play close games. They have the defense in some positions to do well. They just have too young of a defense at positions, but I still have to give it to Los Angeles.
All right, so very interesting because we have a very differing opinion here. So Skylar, you have the Rams going 8-8. You have them losing their first 4, winning their next 5, losing 4, and then winning 3. Mitch, you have the Rams go. You also, Skylar, have the Rams going 4-2 in division with clean sweeps over Seattle and Arizona. No. I'm sorry. With a clean sweep over Seattle, and then splitting the series with Arizona and San Francisco. Mitch, you have them going 4-12 and losers of 7 of their last 8 games, and going 0-6 in division, which really sucks for that team if that's the case because they don't have a first-round pick this year or with the next draft. But that's great for Jacksonville. And then I have them going 7-9, 3-3 in division. I think this team is good enough to just win the games that they should win, but they're not good enough to pull many upsets. So I have them at 7-9. I think for me that was around middle of the pack. Definitely not making the playoffs, I think, in any of our 3 situations.
No, I'd have to double. They don't, but I want to see how close they are.
Yeah, Mitch has them at what, the 2 seed?
They're actually my first seed. I think they're gonna get home field advantage and the bye.
They're the 10 seed. So they would they got 10th in the NFC.
Okay.
And then it's just really pieces of shit after that.
Yeah. All right. So then on the next team that we are covering is the Miami Dolphins. We're going to be able to go very in depth with them. But now we have our What a Putz segment. So What a Putz, again, we pick a team, a player, an organization, mascot, a moment where a team did something really stupid. I have a Putz, but I also have a hero segment. So my Putz is the Washington Redskins for the second time because they did not check before picking the team name that they wanted that they weren't trademarked, which seamlessly transitions into my hero segment.
I love him. He's hilarious.
A man by the name of Philip Martin McCulley, 61 years old. He is a lifelong Redskins fan. Said his favorite player was Joe Theismann. He stated, and I quote, "I want them to change the name and I'm embarrassed if I did anything that slows that down." So he didn't do this intentionally. But he said, "I thought if I hoarded all the good names, that would keep someone else who might be a pain in the neck from getting them." So what he did was he trademarked a bunch of these names that they want. I'll get to the names in a moment. Because he wanted to keep people who maybe would try to sell them for profit away from those guys. So he plans on giving it sounds like he plans on giving the names to the Redskins.
He still wants some money for it.
But he's still going to get some money for the trademark, or at least he's going to get like season tickets for the rest of his life. The names that he did trademark were like, one moment here. I actually have a list of them.
It's like all of the ones that they were thinking of changing it to. It's hilarious.
Hold on.
I saw that article,
he first trademarked the Washington Pigskins in 2015, and since then he's trademarked the Washington Monuments, the Washington Veterans, the Washington Warriors, the Washington Red Wolves, and the Washington Red Tails. He did state that his top choice for the new team name is the Washington Pandas.
After the National Zoo?
That's what I'm assuming. So the Redskins won are my What a Putz because what the fuck are you doing, frankly? But Philip Martin McCauley is my hero. He's everything that I've ever wanted to be. He's stated that he'll give them the stuff for free, but I don't really think he's going to give them the stuff for free. So Philip Martin McCauley, please, God bless you. You're fantastic.
All right, so my putz for this episode is Rashawn Holmes, the center for the Sacramento Kings. And here is why. So he broke the bubble and to pick up some food from like a food delivery service, like a DoorDash or a Grubhub, some kind of thing like that. But that's not why he's a putz. He's a putz because then after that came out and he got punished by the NFL and so forth, his mom went on Twitter and said, "You only crossed the line for mama's cooking, and I was not in Florida, sir. Love you, baby." So he is a putz for crossing the line and not going to his mom's house to get some cooking. So that is, he should know that. Exactly, and that's why he's a putz.
I love it.
The funniest thing was his tweets where he was like, "Hey guys, Postmates delivers. You just have to go over here and pick it up." And then like 3 hours later, he's like, "Oh shit, never mind." And then he has to release a statement where he's like, "I'm on an additional 10-day quarantine. I'm going to be quarantined for 8 more days. I'm so sorry." That shit is so funny to me.
Yeah. The fact that Sacramento's even there is just like a shock to, I think, everyone. My putz is Los Angeles Lakers, again, because they seem to be doing everything in their power to not win the championship. Not doing what they need to do to get Avery Bradley to come with them. Signing J.R. Smith to replace his role, and who he won't because, many reasons. And then Rajon Rondo breaks his hand, which isn't really the Lakers' fault. I'll give it to him. But still, they seem to be doing everything in their power to, get ready to, have all of their skill position players that help them get to where they needed to be the best team in the West. And they're not going to be there. If you told me, they are not going to have Avery Bradley or Rajon Rondo. And I get it. Rajon Rondo wasn't, the best point guard, but he filled a need when they needed it. But now they don't have him. So it's going to be rough. I have to give it to the Lakers. I think that they're really trying everything they can not to win a championship this year. And I hope the Clippers win it now or at least the West. I hope the Clippers win the West. I won't say the entire thing, but at least the West. Just to kind of like spite the Lakers fans.
Yeah, but at the same time, this also just kind of feels like one of those things where it's like LeBron's going to take over, because now
I'll give
everybody's
you.
hurt.
He's got a
Or
better
this
team than he
paves
ever
the
had in
way
Cleveland.
This paves the way for the bald eagle, Alex Caruso, to prove the dominance and his sheer will
Right now,
over the rest of the
hot take.
NBA.
Alex Caruso averages 15, 6, and
Finals
5.
MVP.
Finals MVP.
Alex Caruso. He dunks on Giannis so hard Giannis doesn't want to play basketball anymore. That's
Single-handedly
right
beats
now.
the Clippers.
Yeah.
Instant Hall of Famer. They induct him right after the game.
Literally does it with
the horrible bald spot. Like you can't give him like later when he's just shaved. Like you need to get the horrible hair in there too.
Yeah.
With the bald spot and the comb over and all of it. Yeah.
I mean, I think frankly, like if he gets in the Hall of Fame, then it should just literally be a bald eagle.
Better than anything else.
And then stop taking inductions after that.
Yeah,
exactly. There's nobody greater than him. So
then you just rename it the Alex Caruso NBA Hall of Fame.
Screw Naismith.
Yeah, there you go. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. On the next episode, we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins. We're also going to break down the top 5 NCAA basketball coaches, men's or women's, since the year 2000. So that's about 19 seasons here, give or take. So yeah, we're going to talk about a really interesting team in Miami that I have been so looking forward to talk about. I think that it's such an interesting thing organizationally as to what they're doing down there. Boys, before we sign off here and I get to all the social media stuff, do you have any finishing comments?
Yeah, everybody just be a little more patient and waiting, because before you know it, sports is right around the corner. I mean, we're only a couple of weeks away, so just keep holding on. It's coming.
Yeah.
They did announce that Philadelphia announced that they will not have fans in the stands.
Yeah, I saw that. Into that vein, stop being stupid, people. I'm sorry. Okay, like the United States, like you're stay inside. If you're gonna go outside, wear a mask. If you don't have a mask, maintain 6 feet of distance between you and your other people. Don't go to Disney World. Don't go to Disneyland. Don't go to stupid gatherings. Don't go to COVID parties. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, especially in Florida, in Texas, in California, it's getting tiring, honestly, because you're seeing the ramifications. It's not a hoax. You need to wear a mask. People are dying. More people in the United States have died of COVID-19 than in Vietnam. Twice as many people.
Yeah. So
I that came out as harsh, but it's seriously because, like, guys, people are dying and people are getting sick. And I'm lucky enough not to know somebody that's died or gotten sick, but I'm a lucky person, because there's plenty of people that have lost relatives, that have lost friends, that people that are permanently affected for the rest of their life because of this disease. So please, 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 please be smart out there, okay? We love you, and basketball's almost here. Basketball's almost here. It'll be okay.
Basketball's almost here. Football's almost here. So yeah, we appreciate everybody for tuning in now that Skyler's gotten off his soapbox a little bit. Love you. So just to go over here, you guys can follow us. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Spotify, on SoundCloud, on YouTube, on Reddit. Follow us on all that kind of stuff. Email us, fourthstringsp@gmail.com. That's FOURTH string SP@gmail.com. We'll go over any of your questions. Go listen to some of the previous episodes. We'll go over your questions on that kind of stuff. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you have anything else you want to say, or any questions or anything like that, let us know. Again, we got a great episode coming up after Miami. We got Minnesota and then Skyler's favorite team, New England, right after that. So we're going to be able to tear him a new asshole.
We're going to let him on for that one?
No, probably not, actually. I'll probably just conveniently reschedule. Like, I won't tell him we're recording that day. And then we'll drop
We'll say they're going 0-16.
0-16, yeah. Bill Belichick has a heart attack on the sideline week 1.
Nike the dog takes over.
I want to see more of Nike the dog. I think, to me, he's the hero that this country needs right now.
But not the one it deserves.
No, it's like Nike the dog tells you to wear face masks. would be hilarious. So, no, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic night, and thank you for listening to episode 21 of the Fourth String Sports podcast.